Hello and welcome to We Debate. I'm Joe Munene. Now, they employ millions of youths and serve as a critical means of transport, both in rural and urban areas across the country. But public service motorbikes, better known as Bodas, have been associated with many ills, ranging from reckless driving, flouting of traffic laws, death and injuries, harassment of the public, and criminal activities. To bring sanity to Nairobi's public transport infrastructure and build a dignified 21st century green city in the sun, should Bodas feature in the grand plans for Nairobi's development? Or should they be banned, not just from the central business district, but from a much wider city delimitation zone? This is good for debate.
The debate motion for tonight, let it be resolved. Bodas should be banned from Nairobi City. Our debaters for tonight are, on the affirmative side of the debate we have Dr. Lucas Kivoi, Senior Policy Analyst with the Kenya Institute for Public Policy and Research Analysis, KIPRA. On the negative side of the motion we have David Chesire, Associate Economist, Mentoria Economics.
Dr. Lucas Kivoi, David Chesire, welcome to this debate. The motion up for debate, let it be resolved, Bodas should be banned from Nairobi City. Now, for purposes of alignment on the geographical zone, we have agreed that we are looking at a 5-kilometer radius from the center of the city in terms of the argument. Dr. Kivoi, you are arguing on the affirmative side of this debate. David, you stand in opposition to the debate. Now, we'll start with your 1 minute opening remarks. That will be followed by 5 minutes of your main presentation. And after that, you'll get a chance to rebut against each other's arguments.
On the jury panel, we have Juror 1, Steve Soko, CEO, Soko Directory Investments Limited. Juror 2, Tinega Damason, the Chairman of Gikomba Traders and Director Youth Employment Solutions Initiative. Juror 3, Charles Murimi, National Chairman and CEO, Kenya Boda Association, KBA.
We have a panel of jurors, 3 members of a jury team who will be listening and evaluating on your arguments. Prior to the start of the debate, we have polled the jurors to ascertain where they stand on this motion. And 2 of the jury members are in support of the motion, i.e. they support the banning of Bodas from this region, and 1 of the jury members is opposed. So David, you have your work cut out to win over the other 2 jury members to your side. So to start off, Dr. Kivoi, your 1 minute opening statement.
Yes, thank you very much. Governments across the globe do not exist to massage the ego of their citizens. Governments exist because there need to be order and discipline in the communities where individuals live. And the moment you see a government that is giving in to lawlessness and anarchy, then you know already that we have lost it as a country. So given the incidents that we have seen of Bodas misbehaving across the country, not just in Nairobi, across the country, in Nairobi it is worse. I don't think we need to entertain a rogue group within the CBD. Because what image are we portraying of our country to the global community where Kenya is a big actor? And then we allow Bodas to engage in crime within the city? That would be wrong.
Thank you, Dr. Kivoi. David, your 1 minute opening statement.
Look, I think this is a very simple matter. You cannot ban Bodas. Banning Bodas in our great city means banning thousands of job opportunities. It means ripping out billions of shillings from the economy. And it's denying many hustlers from a reliable and affordable transport solution. It's simply a sector that cannot be waved away.
All right. Would be denying many hustlers their livelihoods. All right, we come back to you, Dr. Kivoi. You now have 5 minutes to make your main presentation.
The first thing that why we need to look at, to rethink about the issue of Bodas in the city, it boils down to safety of pedestrians within the city, safety of business people within the city. We all are aware that Bodas have taken over sidewalks for pedestrians. Now motorists are forced to share their ways with the pedestrians. This is not only a danger to the pedestrians, it's also a danger to motorists. It's also a danger to boda bodas. They are a danger unto themselves. So that means that we need to rethink about allowing boda bodas into the city. They drive against traffic, they make crazy stunts along the roads, and it's like police are helpless when it comes to dealing with them. My second point is the issue of security. It's an open secret that the crimes that are committed within the CBD, the culprits normally escape on boda bodas. Either boda bodas are hired to ferry them, or boda bodas are part of that syndicate of encouraging crime in the city. Criminal gangs in the city are associated with boda bodas. See how they operate within the city. There are some areas which are no-go zone for motorists. Engage them in any small or minor traffic incident, and then you see how you'll be harassed and terrorized as if you don't have rights. Now, going back to the issue of safety, most of these traffic jams we see in the city is because now pedestrians are forced onto the roads that are supposed to be used by vehicles. And the boda bodas have taken over pedestrians' walk. So removing them from the CBD will in one way be one of the steps of ensuring that there is seamless flow of traffic within our city streets. Then the other one is the issue of lawlessness. Wherever you will find boda bodas, there is lawlessness. They don't want to operate in any form of organized economic activity. Would rather we have lawlessness so that they can thrive in the other issue I raised of crime and criminal gangs. And this information is available with our National Police Service. Then the other one is the issue of the health costs. To what extent should we allow our brothers and sisters to be injured and maimed by individuals who don't even care about their own lives? There is no hospital in this country, not just in Nairobi, there is no hospital in this country that doesn't have a ward for victims of boda accidents, because they are a danger to themselves, they are a danger to other road users, they are a danger to motorists. So that's something that needs to be looked at. Then the point of transport policy. Do we have a transport policy that will allow the entry of boda bodas into the city? How many boda bodas operate in this country? Or even in Nairobi CBD? What we have are estimates. Because right now, as we are here, I only need to go to NTSA, register, and then take a boda, and then I'll be carrying people. When you look at the issue of licensing, insurance, when you are allowing this individual into the city, individuals have insured their businesses, you have insured your vehicle, and then you get rammed into by a boda that doesn't have insurance. The individual is not competent to drive that or operate that bike. What happens to the damage that the boda would have caused on the vehicle? So those are the issues that we need to look at. And then also the issue of bodas and their contribution to the economy. I am not whitewashing the contribution of boda to the GDP of this country, but I'm simply saying they are areas they should not be allowed into, and one of them is the CBD, because you cannot allow such a group that has no respect for human life, has no respect even for their own lives, has no respect for the rule of law, has no respect for the image that they portray of this country across the globe, to operate in the city, which is the prime hub of the East African community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kivoi, for your presentation. And now we come to you, David, your 5 minutes presentation on the opposing side.
Thank you. So for a bit of context, in 2008, the government of Kenya zero-rated import duty on motorcycles, and it was a masterstroke. It brought over 2 million jobs, and the sector generates over 1 billion shillings a day. That's nearly 365 billion a year, lifting many communities and individuals out of poverty. Through fuel taxes alone, Treasury collects over 60 billion shillings a year, and at a time when national and household debt is such a crucial issue, are we really in a position to say no to such a vital cog in our economy? It's also providing youth with an affordable access to business, which has led to an increased demand for bikes And we've seen a lot of assembly lines being set up, both here in Nairobi and also in Mombasa. And it's supporting the manufacturing industry, which is a sector that we were not really able to hit our targets during the previous administration. And it's also very key during this period where the Kenyan shilling has really weakened, and it's going to really support a productive and vibrant economy. Next, let's look at it socially. Boda bodas are too vital. Due to the infrastructure gaps, as you mentioned, the young man who was recently moved to Utawala from the village, he might not have a way of getting home from his stage, and boda bodas essentially allow him to have an affordable and reliable solution to this. But they're not just last mile solutions. It's also a linchpin to our social infrastructure. So a study recently showed that the sector alone positively affects up to 6 million people a day. Let's even look at Boda Boda SACCOs. These member-based financial institutions have allowed Boda Boda riders to organize themselves for centralized communication while also developing financial literacy. So simply put, Boda Bodas cannot be banned in Nairobi because they're too important.
Thank you, David. Dr. Kivoi, are you convinced with the arguments that David has put forth in terms of 1 billion every day generated through this transport sector, significant social implications? Over to you with your rebuttal session.
The first thing I would like to bring to his attention is the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And allowing the Boda Boda sector was a knee-jerk reaction, a stopgap measure, a short-term solution to address the issue of unemployment in this country. So that one cannot be used to allow anarchy into the city. It was meant to address the issue of unemployment among the young people who are idle and they were being used at that time, but then they went out of order and became rogue. The second thing I would like to bring to his attention is the fact that Boda Bodas have a wider social impact to the community. That should not be an issue to let them continue causing damage to people's livelihoods, to people's families. Last weekend I was in Bungoma, and a Boda Boda who was carrying a lady and 3 children jumped off the bike and went into the river because a truck that was headed to Malaba rammed into that thing and killed the mother and her 3 children. That kind of recklessness should not be allowed. Is that the impact you are talking about, them having to communities? Of course, it's very dangerous. If that's the impact, then I agree with you. Because the damage that Boda Bodas have caused to families in this country is immense. Cases of sexual harassment, sexual defilement of minors and school-going children. If you talk to our police officers, they will tell you most of the culprits, because I'm involved in those activities of ensuring that we have got socially functioning communities. Most of those cases, they zero into Boda Boda operators. So I don't I'm not still convinced about the impact of Boda Bodas into the community. Next time, maybe we might even say, because prostitution is practiced almost everywhere, then we should let them operate in the open because they contribute a lot to the economy.
Thank you. David, your opportunity to respond.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kivoi.
Thank you very much. So while my counterpart is more learned than I, some of his arguments hold as much water as a sieve. You've talked about security. Boda Bodas were banned in CBD in 2015. But can you say that crime has reduced within the CBD? If anything, it's the opposite. It's got worse. Then you look at also the incident. You're talking about crime and so on. You look at the incident back in March where the woman was sexually assaulted by a few Boda Boda riders. It's brought the issue to the limelight, and since then we've seen a dramatic drop in such incidences of mobilization. But then why do they mobilize in the first place? So I'm a frequent Boda Boda user, and I was in an accident in 2018. The driver was in the wrong, and when the police arrived on site, everything was panned out properly, and the driver was to be charged. So by the time I got to the station, the story had flipped. The driver had bribed the cops, and this poor fellow's bike was impounded, ripping him out, ripping his source of livelihood away from him. Eh? Okay. Then we talked about you talked about regulation. You cannot say that boda bodas are inherently bad. If we talk if we're accusing riders of crimes, we're all human beings. We're all capable of atrocities in our own way. Yeah? So I think that you need to really look at that part of your argument. The other thing is the government mandated all boda riders to be part of a SACCO. Yeah? What does this do? One, it helps them with collective bargaining. We've been seeing issues of rider earnings and so on through these ride-hailing apps. So this is a good opportunity for them to really come together.
And maybe I would ask a question before we take the break. Dr. Kivoi, is it an issue of, because 2015, from the CBD, there was that ban that you mentioned. I think 2018 again, which speaks to an inability to enforce. So is it an issue of enforcement? And in your view, do you think there's enforcement that has failed, and hence maybe the attention should be on what more can be done to formalize the sector, enforce the traffic laws that are required, as opposed to outright banning? Dr. Kivoi, would you speak to that before we take the break?
The problem is not enforcement. The problem is lack of political will. Because boda bodas are a huge voting bloc. So politicians don't want to lose those votes. So they allow them to engage in lawlessness, because they know that when voting comes, they'll go for them. The question I would want to ask our jurors and my colleague here, why are we going to make laws that we know we are not going to enforce? If we make laws, then let's enforce them. Had these laws been enforced in 2015, after the county government came up with that law, then we would not even be talking about the issue of chaos within our roads in the city.
Okay. That brings us to the halfway mark of this debate. We are debating the question of, should boda bodas be banned from Nairobi City? We look forward to hearing from you on your thoughts on this debate. We take a short break. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome to the debate. A quick reminder for you to engage with us on this debate on the KTN Home social media pages. Now we start with you, David. This is the cross-examination phase of this debate. You will get to ask one or two questions before we come to the jury team to ask their questions. So your opportunity to cross-examine. Daktari over there. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Every industry, business, government institution have their bad eggs. But do we throw the baby out with the bathwater because of them? Do we shut down the police force because of a few corrupt cops? Should the 99% of honest riders suffer because of a few crooks? Is it not better to look at the failing of our institutions? NTSA and the police, are they not really who we should be looking at? And the other question, just to wrap it up, where do you chase them to? And that's it.
Dr. Kivoi, where do you chase them? What are the alternatives if we ban them from their livelihood? Over to you.
Thank you, Munene. David, I have not said that they chase them from their livelihoods. I said they need to be regulated. And regulations come with the obligations. Are you happy the way these brothers and sisters of ours operate in the streets? Are you happy when you see them torturing their own citizen in the name of earning a livelihood? Are you happy when you see them robbing phones of people who are innocently going on with their business? I have not said that we shut them down. I have said they need to be regulated, especially where we have got a higher concentration of people, especially in our city. Many people are walking on foot. And here is an individual who comes with his or her bike going against traffic, because they know if someone rams me down, my brothers in the bike industry will come to my rescue. So that's not something that we should tolerate in this city in the name of shutting down the sector. We are not shutting down the sector. We are simply saying that they need to be regulated. And I don't want to give an example. Us individually, in our offices, in our homes, you don't just allow people to get anywhere, anyhowly. There must be regulations. There are areas you are not allowed to go in. Even in our own offices, there are areas in my house where people don't just venture in. So that's the point I'm saying. Regulations. If it means that we give them a 5-kilometer radius and say you drop people at point A or point B, that is what I'm advocating for. But we cannot allow our sidewalks and the pedestrian walks to be turned into parking yards for borders. The issue of the few rogue ones. They say one worm in my community, my people, that one worm spoils the whole fruit. So if the whole fruit is spoiled, then will you eat that fruit? There must be regulations. And I'm not saying they shut down the sector. There must be regulations, there must be discipline, there must be order in that sector. But they should not be allowed to bring the anarchy and lawlessness in the CBD.
Dr. Kivoi, you have 2 questions to David.
My first question is that when you do something called impact or economic impact assessment, there's something called value for money. Are you happy if you go to a hospital and you see the economic impact of borders on our health sector, the burden it has placed on our health sector? Is that something you'll be proud of because you are an economist? Given the nature of our health industry, or let's say health sector in Kenya, would you be happy if you went to a hospital and you see a whole ward and the nurses will tell you, are you happy with the issue, with what they are, with the way they are placing a strain on our health sector? My second question is the issue of those borders. Who is benefiting? Have you done a study to find out who is benefiting from the money, little or big money that they get in the sector? Who is benefiting? Is it them or is someone else?
That sounds like a loaded question. Maybe you'll add a bit more clarity to it. But David, over to you. Who is benefiting?
Who is benefiting? How about Treasury? They're injecting 60 billion shillings annually through taxes alone. What about the everyday man who needs to get from point A to point B? Our roads are simply not equipped. And I'm sorry, Daktari, but you agreed with me there. You said you're not for shutting down the industry. But that's what a ban would do. You're for regulation. And I am also for regulation. Some reforms need to happen. But a ban, that's too extreme.
Daktari, have you got any answers to that?
He's evading the question. He's looking at the money. And because the taxes, even motorists pay more. Well, if you look at the motorists, households, they contribute to that taxes, the fuel levy that go to KRA and the government in particular. So the issue of it is not just them alone. Mm-hmm. All Kenyans contribute to KRAs, the money that they get from the fuel levy. Then the other issue, you know what goes on in the Boda sector. There are some companies that I will not name, the major benefactors, and they operate like cartels and criminal networks. So you are happy that our young men are being exploited by these business cartels that own those bikes. Because if you talk to those young men, because I talk to them, my relatives, they will tell you it's a pain and misery for them and their families.
In terms of how the motorbikes are financed?
In terms of how the motorbikes are financed.
All right. So we now cross, you want to?
Yeah, I need to rebuttal. You've talked about the health sector, yes. But then it's leading to insurance innovations. There is a lot of apps that are coming up that are very attractive. And that's 60 billion shillings that I'm talking about. I'm not mentioning households and other, they're not part of that 60 billion. 60 billion is specifically borders and their contribution towards our efforts to pay back our huge national debt. So they're a vital cog.
Thank you, David. We now cross over to the side of the jurors. We will start with juror number 1, Charles Moremi, who has a very keen interest in this sector. Charles, you may ask 2 questions, indicate the person to whom you are directing the question to. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I would like to direct my question to Dr. Keboy first, because you have mentioned that there are those financing companies where you call them cartels. And I would like to ask, because in the government, county government, those cartels we are talking about have been there since the year 2017. What have the county government have done thus far to make sure that the Boda riders have will access loans and financing companies which will not be cartels in the industry? And number 2, the question number 2, Dr. Kevoy, what is the difference between courier rider, private rider, and Boda rider? All are in the same category? Are they using the same rules? And if you talk about regulations, not banning, what is the kind of policy? Have you done the public participation on the same, involving the stakeholders, like maybe those cartels? As you speak now, you can find that those companies you are calling cartels have done a lot to make sure that in this country, riders have accessed those motorcycles. So I would like to know the categories. When we talk about regulations and either banning, is it courier? Because courier, there's companies who have employed riders. Or is it online riders, or is it private riders, or is it Boda riders? Thank you very much.
Up to you.
Thank you, sir. Charles, I start with your second question. Courier riders, private riders. All of us know the difference between the courier rider, private rider, and Boda. Boda are the ones who are very loud. They are anarchists. They engage in all manner of things. I'm yet to see courier riders or a private rider, someone who is on their own motorbikes, pull those stunts I normally see in the Boda industry. And I stand, or to be corrected maybe, courier riders are delivering cargo, services, mails, and why would they be, and they know that that's what they are doing. Private riders, if you have a motorbike and you want to ride from Laiga to your office, in where there is parking, I don't think that's where we are saying they should be banned. The problem are these brothers and sisters of ours who operate like those streets belong to them, and they are the ones who need to be taken care of. You either play by the laws that are written, or find something else to do. And we cannot tie our brothers and sisters to only Boda industry. There are many, many other things that they can do. If, for example, you think that you have your bike, you can take it to these courier companies and you still get an income, because I know that's what a number of people are doing. The first question about cartels, that is an issue of...
Sorry for interruption, maybe before you get the second question. How do you differentiate the courier rider and Boda rider while they are on the road?
For instance, courier companies, they have trademarked their bikes. Some of them are in uniform. Private riders, they don't even have, they aren't even supposed to carry passengers. That is known, unless it is a family, a man and a girlfriend or a brothers who are going somewhere. Courier riders and private riders don't carry passengers. If you look at the NTSA Act, the Bodas are the ones who are licensed to carry passengers, but some of them, you find them carrying even 5 passengers.
Did you have another question for
Yes,
David?
I have at least 2 questions to David. And number 1, what measures have the county government have taken to make sure that they will be able to recognize the Boda sector? Because according to the 2015 rules and regulations, it is their mandate in collaboration with the national government to give the designation areas for Bodas. And do you think that the Boda riders are satisfying the needs of the society in Nairobi City? Then we have another question. What do you think of a person who is in disability? the person who dropped by matatu at Koja and he want to access another stage or another destination, what do you think in case of banning, they will survive in the city?
Okay. David?
Okay.
A series of 3 questions in there.
Sure. So you first asked about the county government. What steps have they taken? So, of course, there's the bans that have been coming in and out of effect, but they're not being enforced properly. So let's remember something. In 2008, when they zero-rated the import levy on these bikes, we didn't have any form of regulation until 2015. During this period, people had to figure out their own ways. They were treated like bikes, right? So people had to, just bridge the gap somehow. Now, how do we mend those 8 years of lawlessness and so on? I think that yourself and your colleagues at the association are doing a really good job in terms of trying to bring order when the government and fill that gap that the government left. Now moving on to the role it plays in society, I feel as though borders are just not respected, both on the roads and socially. And this friction is what's causing a lot of the animosity that people have towards the borders and also how they also feel about themselves. You've also asked about the question of disability. Borders are some of the only solutions for getting people with PWDs from certain points, especially within this city, where the infrastructure is really not being built to accommodate that demographic. Yeah.
All right.
Can I respond to something?
Yeah, you can chip in.
The issue of respect for borders, I think in any profession, people will respect you depending on how you conduct yourself as an association, as a profession. So respect is not something you command from somebody. Respect will come, you earn respect. And so far, borders are yet to earn the respect of road users and families in this country. So they need to start from there.
Okay. All right, thank you, Charles Murimi, National Chairman, Kenya Boda Association. We now go to juror number 2, Tinega Damasen. Your 2 questions indicate to whom you are directing.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Tinega Damasen, the chairman of Gikomba Traders and director of Youth Empowerment Solution Initiative. I have 2 questions, maybe 3. Number 1, I'll focus on the police and lawlessness. I believe that in this industry, since it was opened in 2008, up to date, we had a challenge that we cannot run away from, to come and punish the young generation that are currently in the industry. The young border riders, or whoever we may call them, it is not their failure. It is the failure of the government to put in place correct measures that will govern the border industry. As I take you back to Rwanda, they have the border running. They did it, they approached it correctly. Kenya is making a lot of millions or billions in the industry. So my point here to Mheshimiwa, who is telling us to ban the border riders within the capital city or the city, it will be unfair. Because if you're talking about criminal gangs, before these 208, we had a number of criminals in the society. So my point here to you, or my question to you, as you think of banning this because of your the security concerns, have you checked your back as you operate that these police officers who are made to enforce law and order, are they doing their duties diligently? Number 2, on the health issue, if I pay tax it means I'll have my fair share in the health industry because all the correct revenue is under. So where is this money being channeled after the correction?
Okay, so you're tying the payment of tax to
Yes.
the availment of health services
Yes.
for the sector?
Because that cannot be an excuse that
Okay.
they are burdening the health sector.
Okay, so police enforcement and the health issue. Both questions to Dr. Kivoi.
Thank you, Tinega, and I appreciate the two critical issues that you have raised. The issue of police officers and lawlessness, it is true it's a challenge. But if you walk to any of these police stations, even here at Central, that I have been knocked by a Boda rider, the first question they'll ask you is, they will not even come here. That's point number one, that they will not even come here. If you ask them why, they'll tell you, number one, that motorcycle doesn't have insurance. Chances are that the rider himself or herself is not licensed to operate that border. The third thing is the issue our chairman was raising. The motorbike may not even be registered as a PSV. So we cannot even blame the police officers for that, because you know how agile and fast motorcycles are, even weaving through traffic jams. So chances they don't want even to come to the police. So we can't blame the police per se. I know they are trying their best. We may have rotten apples in the police, but they are trying their best, especially on road safety and the border operators. So my point goes back to the border actors in the industry. You need to be called to order so that we can make the work of police officers
If we
easy.
cannot blame the police, then we cannot blame the border. Because the failure of the border operator is attached to the government itself. This is a motorbike has been imported. I'm a buyer. Can we start it from there? If you're buying this one, it means you're going to operate it. Can I have the document that you're going to operate on? It can be started from there. You need insurance, you need a driving license. It can be started from there. After the buying, you have all these documents in place so that we provide safety measures. But if you cannot blame the police, then you cannot blame the border.
I respond to that by saying that in law they say ignorance is no defense. If I'm buying a border, I know very well I need to have NTSA driving license. I also need to insure that motorbike. So it is my responsibility to do all that. You cannot blame the police that this motorcycle or this rider doesn't have a driving license or an insurance. It is me who should carry the burden, because if I'm going on the road, then I should ensure that my motorbike is registered with the NTSA as a PSV. It has I have the driving license for the bike, and I have the necessary documentation in terms of insurance, even for my own health.
All right.
Then
Okay.
I come to your second question on the issue of health service. You see, statistics, I'm not an economist per se, but statistically, if say we are 5 people in this room, and that is 5 out of 10, that's a half, 50%. There is no way the 50% will be gobbling, say 60% of the resources. And unfortunately, most of the victims of border accidents in the rural areas, they hardly go to hospitals. They nurse their injuries in homes, and they die. NTSA statistics indicate very clearly most victims of road accidents are borders and the pedestrians. And the point is, pedestrians have been pushed to the roads where vehicles are. Walkways for pedestrians, borders have taken over them.
I would like David to speak to those two issues, the regulation, enforcement, and also the health issue around borders.
Yeah,
and then we move to the last juror.
Thank you very much. So unfortunately, Daktari, your arguments are based on assumptions. Assumptions on top of assumptions, saying the rider doesn't have his license, he doesn't have this, that. Who's to say, right? But what we do know is that there's a lot of corruption that goes on in this country. And I'm sure, Charles, you can attest to this. Your riders are avoiding the police. They know that even if you have all the certifications in place, police so-and-so is notorious in a specific area and will make your life hell. And that in itself can cause lawlessness. They'll be driving along knowing all is okay, and they'll see the policeman up ahead and just be forced to weave across. Now, then touching on the health sector, You're right. Riders are the #1 cause of casualties and so on. But what you're missing out is it riders colliding with each other, or are they riders colliding with the other cars on the road, right? And if that's the case, then I think both sides need to be addressed.
Okay.
Riders' recklessness, that is the problem. I'll tell you this for free. We may have some rotten apples in the police service, but I am yet to see a police officer, because you drive on these roads. If you have all your paperwork, which police officer will harass you? I don't think they will harass you. They will be harassed maybe if you look at the way they carry their cargo. That's one issue. That's one problem they have with the police. Not because of the documentation. And if I asked you earlier, how many Boda riders are licensed in this country, even at the NTSA database, we don't have the statistics. So, and that's where the problem is. We don't have the statistics on even the numbers, actual numbers, estimates. The chair of the Boda Association has raised an issue with Rwanda. Rwanda, we have all motorbikes are tagged, their GPS. So you can't commit a crime and escape, because it was a problem that they had. But we have forgotten the issue that most Boda operators, what they do is they'll only buy a motorbike with one helmet. What of your passenger? So we can't blame the police for that. It's
So
the
isn't there a regulation at the point of buying the bike that you need to buy the jackets and the helmets? I would like to, maybe I ask the chairman, there's a regulation in terms of when you are purchasing the bike that you need to buy the helmets. Is that adhered to?
#1, there is that regulation that each and every dealership, when you are releasing the motorcycle from your dealership, you have to issue 2 reflector jackets and 2 helmets to that rider. You have to make sure that that rider has the insurance of that motorcycle.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that that rider has the driving license to ride from where he bought that bike to where he is going. And we in the year 2018, we started, we created a task force through Matiang'i, that each and every dealership must have the database of where that rider is going to ride that motorcycle, in which country, which sub-county, which ward, which state. Now, as David was saying, the issue of this equation is about corruption. Because even if we talk about regulation, as Dr. Kevoy is saying, and maybe banning, where will you start? Because in the year 2013, Kidero wanted to ban Boda riders in CBD. We took him to court as an association, and we brought at least 28 registered certificates of SACCOs. And court ruled that these certificates or these SACCOs are not belong to transport SACCOs, like the Matatu one, because it is saving and credit SACCO, something like that. Then from there, we came and started something called policy, mobilizing the agencies, government agencies, to create or to form another institution which can handle that matter. And that's why we came up with a Transcorp, that is Transport Cooperative. Okay. Now, as we speak, all Boda riders are supposed to register under Transport Cooperative. Okay? Now, when you talk about regulation, when you talk about banning, where are you starting? Are you starting from where we have already started to make sure that this sector will be regulated? Or you want to come and disorganize what we are doing and to start doing your own thing? That's the question.
So in your view, there are certain measures that are ongoing that are making a lot of sense towards formalizing the sector?
Yes.
Okay. Allow me to take the last juror, Steve Biko. Your 2 questions indicate to whom you are directing.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Biko. I'm in manufacturing. I have 2 questions to David. One, you alluded that the Boda sector has been very supportive of the manufacturing, but you failed to actually connect the two in terms of how the growth of the Boda sector has actually led to manufacturing. I would like you to clarify on that, and if possible, you have the numbers. Then 2, you were asked a question by Dr. Kivoy, and you did not answer it in regards to healthcare. The issue of every level 1 to 4 hospital in the country have a designated ward for boda guys. When you asked the question, you talked about insurance technology apps. I fail to see the connection between what's really happening on the ground and how boda guys can be able to take online apps for insurance. If you please could actually clarify on those two issues.
Over to you, David.
All right. So you asked about manufacturing. Now, I don't have the numbers, but what I do have is a clear correlation between when the import levy came into play and when we started seeing assembly points around Nairobi and around Mombasa. I think you can just connect the dots on that front. On the health side, I think my point is, of course, it is a big issue. But what I had previously said is that we don't know if is it a rider-on-rider issue or is it a rider-to-driver issue. And then from there, who do we hold accountable? The reason I mentioned the tech space is that we're going through an evolution. You see, it's encouraging innovations and so on to address these things. Like I know there's been some products that have been put out where if a boda gets into an accident, of course, and they're hospitalized, they can no longer earn an income for their family. So some of these products are allowing people to, riders to be hospitalized, but also receive some form of small payout per day. I think it's around 2,000 a day. And at least that can go towards supporting their families. So that's the crux of what I was trying to get at.
If I may chip in there, my colleague David has still evaded the question that Biko has asked. You are looking at it from a very selfish perspective about increasing the income of bodas. What of the damage that these riders will have done to the passengers they are carrying? Because to the best of my knowledge, those bodas only have third-party, the ones that are insured, third-party insurance. Yes, that app will give income to the boda rider who is injured. What of the families of those who have been maimed, of those who have lost their lives? Okay.
I have some stats here. 2.4 million riders in the country, bodas. 60% have no insurance. 70% are not properly trained. And maybe that speaks to the problem. Now, as we wind up, I would like to ask, and I'll start with you, David. If you see a 21st century Nairobi, skyscrapers and all that, green areas, is this the most efficient way of transport, bodas?
Yeah, I think until we figure out the transportation sector across the board with proper infrastructure, we can look at countries in Southeast Asia, for example, Vietnam, Thailand. It's very predominant, and these are first world countries. So I think that there's a blueprint of having a proper regulation in place. I mean, we've talked about Rwanda.
Yeah.
It's just a progression, digitizing the industry and making slow. I'm sure 10 years ago, that statistic of 60% not having insurance was 100% didn't have insurance. So we're making strides in the right direction, and I think that's what's important.
And I think over the last 1 year, there was talk about the smart licenses, tying it to NHIF to just try and formalize the sector. Dr. Kivoi,
yes.
Is it about banning or dealing with the enforcement and how to formalize the sector, as well as dealing with the corruption?
The first thing, the statistics that you've just given us there are telling that we are sitting on actually the bombs have been exploding, only that they rarely make it to the limelight. 60% have no insurance, so it tells you that we need to rein in hard on these people. And as I said earlier, ignorance of law cannot be used as defense. In my blueprint for Nairobi and any urban area, CBD, I don't think we should be talking of bodas. In fact, because of the issue of lifestyle diseases, what is the problem if Douglas Kivoi can walk from Hoja Mosque down here up to Parliament buildings? It's healthy. We need to have a healthy population. And that can only happen if we take care of this menace of uninsured boda riders and their anarchy, and also ensure that Kenyans are made to understand the essence of having a disciplined, orderly city.
You still have 1 minute to make your closing statement. I will start with you, Dr. Kiboi. It sounded like you were making that closing statement. Take 1 minute and summarize all your thoughts, and then David will do his closing statement.
Thank you. For me, we are moving into the next century, Kenya being the hub of this region. We should not allow border borders into the CBD unless there are courier companies or private riders who know where they are going. And I've listed my concerns as far as the border sector in this country is concerned and how they operate and how they made life difficult for us. So I didn't say we ban, I say we need to regulate and ensure that they are not allowed into the CBD. We need to decongest our cities, we need to decongest our urban areas and not congesting them with the border riders. We are talking of clean cities. In my view of clean cities, we should not be talking of border riders.
David?
Yeah,
closing statement?
Thank you. I'm actually quite happy that we reached a consensus. Banning them, I think we've agreed, is just not the way forward. We do need reform, we do need regulation, and the industry needs to evolve. But if you're talking about a ban, we're talking about huge financial consequences. What does it mean socially? It's become too integrated into our culture. And until the infrastructure is sorted out, I don't think a ban will work. Let's talk about tweaking the system.
That's it for the debate. Thank you to both of you for the positions you've taken. We now find out whether the debaters have done enough to sway the jurors to their side of this debate.
At the beginning of the debate, 2 jurors were in support of the motion, 1 was against. Have the debaters managed to win over the jurors with their argument?
Well, the jurors' verdict is in, and at the end of this debate on the motion, let it be resolved, border borders should be banned from Nairobi City. One of the jury members is in support of the motion, 2 are against. So David, you seem to have won one of the jury members to your side of this debate. Well, that's the position of the jury. Do you agree with it back at home? We welcome your feedback and comments on this debate. It's a pertinent debate topic that affects not only the participants, but also the public in terms of their transport needs. A big thank you to the 2 debaters once again. Thank you to the jury members. Thank you to our location host, the Norfolk Hotel. A big thank you to the team behind this production. My name is Joe Munene, and we'll see you at the next debate.